Hey guys, welcome to our January webinar. I know a lot of people sign up for this one. It's going to be a really, really good one because we're talking about SEO and organic leads, and we all know that is the best. That is the best type of lead out there. Just a reminder, our chat is open all the time. So feel free to jump in the chat and ask questions, give compliments. Tell us if you're team Blake Lively or Justin Baldoni. Personally, I'm team Justin right now with all the stuff that's coming out. Where do you stand on that, Lydia? Are you up on it?
I'm sorry. What was that?
Are you keeping up with the Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni thing?
Oh, yeah. Very, very loosely. It shows up on my Discover feed actually here and there. So I do.
I'm like a little too much into it. I like that Bobby in the chat's like, yes, team Justin. I feel like at first I was kind of team Blake, like at first. Because so many people were backing her up, but I was like, I don't know. The more that's coming out, guys,
It's one of these, you
not
just never know what actually went down. I think everything's just PR spin. So it's, I think,
it
hard
could
to
be.
know
Could
what
be.
is
You know, we have to
truthful.
wait a year. They're going to court March 6th. I think it's March 6th of next year. So it's like we have to wait a whole year for this thing to even go to court. So this is actually I don't want TikTok to get shut down because I want to keep finding out,
Just for that alone.
just just for that. All right, guys, welcome to our webinar. Let's go ahead and jump in. We're going to talk about SEO. If you are experiencing lower lead flow on your website, if you experienced that last year, I just want to tell you it's not you. Like it's everyone. I don't know a beauty school that has seen like increased traffic. It's not you. You're not crazy. And today we have Lydia with us. She is an SEO expert. She actually does SEO for our company, Beauty Schools Directory. Like her and her team is in charge of that and has had a long career in SEO. So, Lydia, why don't you introduce yourself to our community?
Sure. Thank you so much, Jen, and welcome everybody. My name is Lydia Poon. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Throughline Marketing, which is the parent brand that owns Beauty Schools Marketing Group. And yeah, I'll just give some quick highlights of my background so you know where I'm coming from here. My career has been really largely in digital marketing, and even prior to SEO, I've been in and around digital outreach marketing for really most of my career. So my core competencies are in things like, content creation for the web, lead generation, conversion optimization, understanding how a website is put together for good user experience and for search engines, and the analytic side of things as well to really maximize the yield for businesses, whatever that purpose is, through organic search. I've been an SEO proper, I'd say, since 2009. Except for a little brief hiatus when I worked for Amazon, where I wasn't doing SEO for them. But really, aside from that, as an SEO, I've been focused on in-house work, so generating organic search leads for companies whose business model was basically having owned and operated sites, like Beauty Schools Directory as an example, generating leads from users and then selling those leads. And so I did that first in financial services, actually. So, we're talking consumer websites with content about insurance and mortgages and credit cards, that kind of thing. And then in about 2015, I moved over to work for a startup whose, sole source of revenue was generating organic search leads for EDU customers. So a mix of 4-year and 2-year institutions. So that was really my first real foray into higher ed SEO. We had a small portfolio of sites at that company that generated at its height probably about 1 million sessions a month, mostly unbranded, high intent searches for education. And then about 6 years ago, I went to Throughline Marketing, which, as I said, is the parent brand for Beauty Schools Marketing Group. And my team and I, as Jen just said, we run BSD, Beauty Schools Directory, in-house. And then in the past few years, we have really turned more to lending our internal capabilities to a handful of clients who are with us for not only the SEO services, but other digital marketing agency services as kind of a whole package. So that's
Love
my
it.
quickie bio.
So Lydia is much smarter than me. So I'm so glad she's on because you guys
That is not true.
you are much smarter than me. Y'all, and unless it's about TikTok, I might have you beat in that
You
category, but
definitely have me beat on TikTok.
everything else,
Yes,
Lydia knows
not
everything
not
about.
true. But thank
But
you.
we're going to have a really fun discussion today because, to me, SEO sounds boring, and it probably does to a lot of you. It's like, this is nerdy. I don't know what we're talking about. It feels like Star Wars. But we're going to try to make it conversational, approachable, and understandable because I know a lot of people in the beauty school space. We have a lot of admissions people on here that are like, dude, I just want leads. Like, I don't care where they come from. I don't care if they fall out of the sky. I just want leads. And so we feel like as a company that represents marketing in this space, we need to tell you what's going on. And, you know, the sky is falling in SEO. Like the stuff is going on and we need to chat about it. So not to scare you, but SEO stands for what, Lydia?
Search engine optimization. So it
Okay.
is the art and science of positioning your website in a way that is friendly to search engines so that when people are searching for queries that are related to you, you hopefully rank higher than you otherwise would. So it's kind of grooming your site to be friendly to search engines. And I do want to clarify, because I know you mentioned, Jen, that a lot of folks are a little bit fuzzy on the exact definition of SEO as opposed to SEM or PPC marketing. And so I just want to clarify and level set for
Let's do
everybody,
it.
just in case that is a confusion. So we've all been on Google. So when you go on Google, there are the little ads that say sponsored. And so anything that has the sponsored tag on it, that's a Google ad. That is paid advertising. And the sort of analogous label to SEO would be SEM, is often used, search engine marketing. It's kind of confusing because that sounds like the umbrella term, but that's really paid marketing. So that is pay per click. If someone clicks through a sponsored ad, the advertiser pays per click for that to Google. And then the other would be SEO, which is the organic listings or so-called unpaid listings, which is, usually underneath the sponsored ads, you'll see, anything that is where you click on it and that click does not require cost to the site publisher.
I actually have a question about that because I don't even think we talked about this, Lydia. Underneath sponsored, sometimes there's a map and
Yeah,
then it has like the listings, and then below that is the organic search results.
correct.
So is there anything paid happening in that map category? Because I know there's a lot of schools that are like, I am closer in my city, but I'm seeing five other locations that are further away. How do I get ranked higher in the map area? Can you sum up with?
Yeah. So first of all, the map area is generally speaking still unpaid. If you click over into like just looking at the maps, like on the tabs in Google, or if you're on Google Maps itself, right, it is possible to have a sponsored listing within that map pack or so-called local pack, which is, on desktop, you see it as like a 3 block across, right? So that is largely still unpaid. I can talk about this a little bit later, but essentially that is what's called local SEO, which is kind of a sub-discipline of larger SEO. And I can talk a little bit more about the ranking factors that go into it when we talk about reviews. I think you wanted to mention
Okay,
reviews
perfect.
later,
Yeah.
and I
So
can go
we
over
will
that.
we'll get
Yeah,
into that. So we are not going
absolutely.
over any sort of like display campaigns, PPC today. We are strictly
Correct.
going to be talking about organic SEO, and then we will get into that whole map thing.
Yes.
You've been in the SEO space for a really long time, and I'm sure strategies have changed over the years. What were maybe some really, we're not going to spend too much time on this, but sort of like give us an overview of a couple things that helped people rank really high in the past.
Yeah, so really the algorithm has gotten more sophisticated as there's been this kind of arms race of, people gaming the system, if you will. And so Google has tried to get smarter and smarter, and SEOs have tried to get smarter and smarter and figuring out and reverse engineering what's going on. But, in the early days, I'm talking, like 2000, early aughts, that
Like Ask
was,
Jeeves days.
yes, totally. Back in the day, Alta Vista, yeah, those brands that were hot, Yahoo. Uh,
Mhm.
things were easier to game then. It was a lot more keyword driven. So, and I think this is where a lot of this kind of Star Wars mentality comes from because, it was this idea of, okay, there's this black box and people are doing black box things to make it work. And it's sort of this weird, nerdy voodoo thing, right? But when it comes down to it, I would say that the way SEO has evolved in a good way is to get away from some of these like, oh, you're gaming the system because you know what strings to pull in the background, to more of a common sense like, hey, you've got users who have questions, answer those questions and provide a good experience from that for them, which is harder to game and it is harder to say like, oh, do these checklist items and you're done. But in a way, it makes it easier to understand because it is just, again, more common sense, right? But to go back to answer your question, I mean, things that used to work would be, okay, carefully choose the keyword phrase that is, most likely going to generate the high intent users that you want. So maybe it's, cosmetology schools near me or something like that, right? And on your program page for cause, put that into the title tag, which is the title tag is basically what shows up in Google in that blue link, but is not actually on your page itself. It also shows up in the little top of your browser window. Sometimes you usually don't see the whole thing, but it's kind of this piece of data that's attached to your web page that isn't user facing. And it used to be that if you added, a left loaded keyword, meaning like not even that deep into the title tag, but make sure you put it first in your title tag, that all important keyword, that would potentially matter. Choosing what keyword phrase to put there would matter. And we would run experiments where we would swap out what that keyword was. Okay, maybe it's not cosmetology schools near me. Let's just try cosmetology programs now. And maybe you get this kind of slightly different mix of how the algorithm ranks that page relative to your competitors. And we could see those changes. And now, different ball game. I mean, like as of, gosh, probably about 5 years ago now, 3 to 5 years ago, Google started not taking those title tags as given, and basically saying, you know what, we might know better than you what that page is about. We're going to go scrape that page. We're going to generate our own title tag for you at least 50% of the time. And so that is one concrete example of a ranking factor that used to matter more, or at least something that would influence the click-through rate. I mean, I want to be technically correct here. It wasn't necessarily a ranking factor, but it would be something that SEOs could serve up that users would see on Google that would affect the click-through rate. But now Google is like, we're going to kind of take that out of your hands even, right? So that's something that just matters less. That keyword focus matters less.
Okay, interesting. And of course, we're going to get you guys into here in a minute exactly what are the strategies then. If that's not working, what should we be doing? I want to first talk about specifically AI.
Yeah.
Because I have noticed this even when I Google things, and I'm sure other
Mhm.
people here have too. When we Google things, sometimes at the very top, AI is giving us a generated answer to that instead of giving us a list. So, how is AI affecting overall SEO and the landscape today?
Yeah, so this is huge. And I would say this is one of the macro changes that's really driving a lot of the volatility that we're seeing, not just as a consumer who's searching, as you said, Jen, but on the side of the advertisers. So, this recent consumer facing popularization of generative AI has had a couple of pretty giant effects in this space. And unfortunately, all of them, I would say, are bad for advertisers, businesses who want to share a voice to digital users in this kind of unpaid Google search realm. So, one effect is that, you know, literally the space available to you as a potential site to show up in what is now a really small space, because let's face it, it's, for beauty schools, it's roughly 75 to 80%, almost always of your users are on a mobile device. And as we know, there's, room for maybe like 3 sites at most, organically on that screen. But when Google does that generative AI thing and pushes, I mean, like literally generates that paragraph of text to try to answer the user's query, that literally pushes down the impression share for everybody else, right? So that's one very direct effect. Um, why are they doing this is also gets into some of the other changes, right? They're doing this because Google's their goal has been, and this is not a new one, but in general, they want to serve the user with the best results so that they get their question answered, right? And that's always been their goal. It's been this kind of moving target. And for years, they were doing that by trying to serve up the best results, right?
That's probably
But
also why they did the title tag thing that you just talked about. They're like, well,
correct.
these people are figuring things out. People are trying to like buck the system.
Yes.
Like, no, we know what's on the page. Let's just
Yes.
answer it for them. Okay.
Exactly.
Their
Yeah.
intentions are good.
Uh, well, one can
For the
debate
user,
that. I think it's hard for me to, I mean,
we don't
they're
really know,
far from
but
their don't be evil days, let's just say that. Uh, but yes, I mean, I do agree that they do have an intent internally as a product to try to serve the user, which is to, again, answer the question as quickly as possible, right? And so they have been, I mean, we've all seen this, right? Long dead are the days of the 10 blue links. That's kind of classically what we think of as like the very simple. I mean, there's memes. I've seen memes about this where it's like Google 15 years ago was simple, right? You'd go and maybe there was a paid ad, but like you really just saw some quality links to click on
this is
and
why I love you, Lydia. Our memes are we are in different algorithms. I've never seen a Google meme a day in my life, but I love that
yeah,
you
I know we've got a lot of nerdy
they know that that's like,
feelings
yeah,
and
they're gonna serve that up to you. That
right.
makes sense.
So Google has over the years introduced a lot of these additional search features, right? And a lot of these have interfered, I would say, with businesses and sites that are publishing their own website. So when they first started with featured snippets, right, that is something that we've all seen. And what I'm talking about is not a generative AI result, but it's a very similar thing where it just tries to like extract a piece of information. Usually, if it's a transactional type of query or like very straightforward informational query, it would put that there. So it's like, when was Blake Lively born? That kind of thing where we all know now we don't get, like Hollywood E Online as the top result. No, you get the answer. Blake Lively was born
Yeah.
in da 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 year, and that's just Google basically, stealing clicks, if you will, from publishers. But from their perspective, they're like, yeah, that's a simple thing. We know that answer. Let's just display it and have everyone go on
So
their
are
way,
these
right?
generative AI things, is it like a chat, like is it just like a chat GPT sort of answer, or are they sourcing it and giving you a link to that? Is it like how much is cosmetology school? And they're like, roughly it's 20 grand according to beauty school's directory. Like what is AI doing in the way of answering and
It
crediting people?
It is okay. So there's two parts to that, right? One is that yes, it is an actual generative AI. It operates similar to ChatGPT. I mean, I'm vastly oversimplifying, I'm sure, for real AI nerds, but it is trying to on the fly create the answer for you for that query when it pops out. This idea of sourcing has become certainly like since they debuted this has been a real sore spot, obviously, to
Hmm.
all of us who should be pretty outraged about Google and other big players in the space with this kind of generative AI technology essentially having ripped off everybody's content, right? And then not even giving the click anymore. So I think they've made some fig leaf attempts at saying like, oh, what do you mean we're sourcing? But let's be real, no one's clicking on those sources. I mean, Google has come out and said, like, oh, yes, actually, these featured results within the AI results, they often get, more traffic than the old position one. But I flat out just don't. I don't believe that. I don't think that passes the sniff test. Or maybe it's truthful under very, very specific conditions where they feel like they can say that. But I think common sense is that, for any of us who have dabbled as consumers with AI generative tools know that unless we're hunting specifically for the hey, is this accurate, or you have reason to really dig into the sources, the vast majority of the public is not going to go do that, and that is essentially a lost click. So that is um, really one of the other effects as well, is just the idea that yeah, if people get their answer, and may or may not be accurate, but once people get their answer, yeah, they're just gonna not click. And so the rise of what is called the zero click search is absolutely top of mind in discussions around SEO right now, the zero click search and how to kind of break through that. Because in the short to medium term, Google has zero incentive on the organic side to provide that click, right? I mean, on the long run, maybe they're worried about killing the goose that laid the golden egg, meaning that, if a lot of sites no longer publish, then they lose their, new and current training information that they scrape from to power that AI. But unlike in paid, where their own revenue's on the line, so absolutely they're going to try to fight tooth and nail to keep those clicks going to those paid ads. On the organic side, their incentives are absolutely not aligned with individual site owners.
Yeah, yeah. So that, you guys, is one of the top reasons, one of the, we say top three reasons why schools today are suffering lower organic lead flow. The second reason, let's dive into Google algorithm, because this is something I just keep hearing. And to me, it's like a buzzword. And I hear it from mostly school owners and marketing directors who come up to me at events and they're like, we are not doing well organically. And our agency told us, oh, it's Google algorithm updates. Are they BSing me? Are they lying to me? What does that even mean? They're not honestly doing a great job explaining it to schools. So we're going to do that for you. Lydia, is this real? What does it mean? What is the Google algorithm changes? And when did it happen? Was it mid last year? Like, why are schools seeing less leads and less organic traffic?
Yeah. So some of it is that like loss of inventory that I mentioned. Um, the other thing that I'll mention too is, I don't know how much you want me to touch on this, but another effect of AI has been to put a lot of heat under Google. I mean, like, I think we are seeing the beginning of this fragmentation of where users are going in terms of, and I will promise will loop back around to this algorithm question, but, essentially Google's losing market share. I saw a headline from about 2 weeks ago, and it said that Google, for the first time since 2015, is under 90% market share. And that's, it's a long time for this, essentially monopoly in
Yeah.
search to have existed. And obviously, close to 90% is still pretty darn close to a monopoly. But I do think that a lot of it is that Google is worried. They are very worried because any little, bit of loss of users means it threatens their paid business, right, which pays the bills. And so,
Well,
a
speaking
lot
of
of,
worried, that's where everyone gets their leads from. It's from good. I mean, and when I look at marketing budgets of schools, the majority is spent on PPC on Google.
yeah,
So if less people are using Google to search, that should be scary for Google. So they're trying to figure it
yeah,
out basically, right? They're getting less
exactly. So
changing algorithms.
yeah, so they're in hyper experimentation mode. If you follow any tech news, like, they're like Google I/O, their big, developer conference every year. Like this past year, they were, AI everything, right? That was really what they were trying to demonstrate. I think this has a couple of effects, right? One is that it does internally, I mean, just in terms of corporate allocation of resources, they it's impossible for them not to sort of take their eye off the ball a little bit in terms of like improving the actual regular search results, because they're putting a lot of their team and talent on the generative AI piece, right? And that's not going away. The CEO, Sundar Pichai, he did say earlier this year in a New York Times interview, like 2025 is going to be a big year for search. We have a lot that we're going to introduce basically. And, from what I understand, a lot of this going to be AI oriented. So it's buckle up time for us for sure.
Mhm.
There's no reason to think that's going away. But anyway, going back to this, like, is it real when there's a algorithm change, right? I have to say, I've mentioned this maybe to a couple of our clients earlier, but I used to hate it when members of my own team would try to explain drops because of algo changes. And to me, that felt like a cop out. Like, okay, yeah, the Google algorithm is basically like the weather, and you're really going to complain about the weather as the reason for something, it didn't it was too neat of an explanation and also unknowable. And so that to me always felt unacceptable, frankly. So I always just like didn't like that. I was like, well, at least show me, where are the losses coming from? Why? What pages? What are the queries? Let's try to figure it out. Let's try to look at who won, relative to us competitively and try to figure out why, right? But I will say that that has changed in the last, I'd say, 2 years or so, 2.5 years, where the algorithm changes. And here I would say too that I'm referring to what Google calls core algorithm changes, or like bigger changes to like their model, right? They're always making tiny tweaks here and there in the background, and we just don't know about it. But these announced algorithm changes, they used to happen about twice a year, and now they happen seriously like every other month. It is
And you
not
get an
surprising.
email about that essentially as an agency? Like how do you know? How do you stay up?
Google announces it on their blog, on
Okay.
their search blog. They'll say like, "Hey, core update rolling out." So they do announce those.
Okay.
And again, they happen way more often now. And crucially, as an SEO, what I'm seeing now in the last couple of years that wasn't the case earlier is that the changes seem really arbitrary. So they are trying to combat a lot of spam, and that is another reason for, AI affecting things, because now with AI, people can literally, hit a magic button and stand up a site overnight. And so Google is playing whack-a-mole with these sites and really trying to take out the spammy results. And so it's a difficult business problem for them, right? But it also means that um, you know, there's a lot of collateral damage when Google is trying to screen out spam, and I think it's not doing a great job of it, in the sense that a lot of the algorithmic changes now, like, okay, core update rolls out, you see winners and losers, and like for sure, like pick a industry vertical, pick a geo, I don't care, you're gonna find results that don't really make sense. It's like, oh, heck, that site is beating us. Like, that
Mhm.
doesn't make sense. That's total crap, you know,
Yeah.
frankly. And so it's a refrain. And I think a lot of even mainstream people, civilians not in the biz, have complained about this too. Like, hey, Google search results just don't seem as good as they used to be, right? And I think some of it is similar to, um, or some of it is what I talked about, where it's like, yeah, this rise of AI, spammy content, and how easy it is now to generate content, and just like trillions of pages spewed out on the internet now that they have to like sift through and say like, no, this sucks. That's legitimately, again, a hard problem for them. But I think they're finding it difficult to do a better job at really understanding quality, and which
Yeah.
pages are answering that query. And like I said, I have found lots of unambiguously bad search results, in the beauty space, where it's like that just doesn't make sense.
So last year, again, we saw a ton of Google algorithm updates instead of just your kind of standard two. Someone asked me a question here. Alicia is wondering, okay, so if Google is losing a little bit of their market share, where are they going? And I know one of the things is going to be our third update before we get into things you can do. But are people just sort of like going to Chat GPT, or what is Google? Are they even saying where they think people are going? Where are people searching? Is Jeeves
So
back? Let us know.
yes, not Jeeves, for sure. But it's actually relatively difficult to get current accurate data on this. People are trying, but I think part of the issue as well is that these are not necessarily apples to apples searches, right? So I think a couple things going on, right? One is certainly social, right? And I know, Jen, you would be the first to say like, hey, TikTok in particular is being used, especially with,
Good.
some of these target demographics, younger generations are turning to that first, right? Whereas, our generation, or my generation, like Google is literally the verb, because it's top of mind. It is the first place to go to search for things. That is no longer the assumption. And so it is definitely, bleeding to social, and TikTok in particular. And then what I mentioned about apples to apples is the case too with the generative AI engines like ChatGPT being kind of most popular among them. But people, yes, are turning to ChatGPT in some way. It seems to be a little unclear whether some of that big, early adopter hullabaloo that happened when it was like a big splash in the news, whether that's kind of died down a little bit in terms of like how sticky is that really for the average user to go search there instead of Google. But also, the nature of a chat GPT session is very different from how you would interact with Google in terms of like, okay, well, is one session equivalent to a search session where you're doing a couple of sequential things to get at the same thing, where maybe in ChatGPT you lump it all together in one giant question that's really niche to what you're looking for.
Yeah.
So it's hard to determine how, again, the apples to apples market share information, but I do think anecdotally, it is the case that people are turning to, maybe not necessarily because of the AI engines, alone, but it's this general trend toward, Google losing its iron grip as like the one place to go if you
Yeah.
have a search.
Okay, guys, I see your questions. We're going to get to them here in a second, so keep typing them in. I love that everyone is so engaged, and it's funny because a couple people just brought up, oh, all my students are saying they go to TikTok to search. So that's the third reason that we're going to talk about today. Before we get into a checklist of things you guys can actually do in your schools to help, I do want to talk about TikTok. Um, I read an article fourth quarter last year that said 51% of Gen Z is ditching Google for TikTok. you know, Morgan, our account manager, and myself, we go on the road a lot. And when we are searching for restaurants, we go straight to TikTok because I want to hear it from someone authentically. And TikTok themselves last year, it's sort of in beta. Not a lot of people know about it, and they don't really fully know about it. Like they're working out the details, but they're going to be launching search campaigns directly as well in TikTok because they know people are using them as a search engine now.
Yep.
Um, and so let me tell you what's scary. Schools, y'all are behind. You guys are behind. Also not surprising because I was in the school space when Facebook rolled out and y'all were behind. Everyone was like, "Oh, it's a fad. It's a fad." I was like, "No, it's not, y'all. It's not. It's not a fad. This is here to stay." And who would have thunk it? It's still here to stay. And when Instagram came out, that's all I heard. Oh, great. No one's going to want to get off TikTok because now we have Instagram. And I heard the same thing with TikTok. And look at it. It's the top app used now with Gen Z, especially for searches. And so now, is there a threat it'll go away? Maybe, 60 days, we're going to really find out if a sale is made. Regardless, people are on it. That's where your students are, even if you aren't. And so I think that TikTok is affecting search results on Google, and schools need, here's my advice for all of you people who work at a school and how you can use TikTok. There's two schools of thought. For me, one is like a fun, organic, going with the trends, going with the audio trends, getting your brand out, showing your culture, getting your students to do dances, lip syncs, things that are trending on there. I think you absolutely should do that. And I think there's a couple schools that actually do that pretty well. I've mentioned them before on webinars. There's a couple T spas that I think do this extremely well. Then there's the other school of thought when it comes to SEO type of content. So TikTok is crawling videos with the phrases, they're looking at captions, and they want to serve up their users with the best SEO content, sort of like Google does. They're trying to emulate that. The problem is, if you guys remember a couple months ago, I did a webinar on this where I audited a bunch of school TikToks, and 99% of them were doing the same things. They were taking their Instagram content. Sometimes it even had the Reels logo, and they were just throwing it up on TikTok. And I was cringing. Like, you can not do that. TikTok is going to be like, nope, we know that came from Instagram, and we are not showing that to our users. It's like the number one thing not to do. And so if I'm a school, I'm taking raw content and I'm putting it on TikTok with TikTok words and TikTok music. And I'm taking that same content and then I'm putting it on Instagram with Reels words and Reels video, audio. You cannot just like go from one to the other. I'm also seeing captions. I'm not going to call out the school, but I've been seeing their TikTok content. It's a beauty school, and their captions are like this long. That's bananas. That's bananas. It needs to be like this long. Have really good keywords in there, but it needs to be shorter. Um, and then I saw another school, not going to call them out. It's another beauty school that disables their comments on TikTok. That is, don't do that. That is number one, don't do that. What a lot of people don't know is that TikTok is actually more valuable for the comments. Sometimes comments get more likes and replies than the video itself. People go straight to the comments. When I don't watch a video, y'all, without opening up the comment section, your comments really do help drive SEO. So if you're disabling that, you have a problem at your school. Like you're afraid that what people are going to bash you. Like I don't know what is going on at your school, but like there should be zero reason why you're disabling comments on your TikTok. That's also bananas to me. So yeah, what I would do as a school is I would have content on there that has really great hooks. I have done so many TikTok webinars this past year. Go on our library, you can find them. But things like these are the 3 ways to enroll in ABC Beauty School. You want to know how much it costs to go to cosmetology school? Let me tell you. And then you get into it. What's in a beauty school kit? Did you know that your student kit is included in the price of tuition? Let's go through and show you my favorite products. And then you're doing it. And then you're having, a teacher saying, get ready with me while I get ready for my first day of teaching this new cosmetology class. And they're doing their makeup and they're talking about the program. Like, this is the type of content you need to be having on your school's page. It needs to be interesting. You need to have strong hooks. And you need to have real faces, not anything stock, no Instagram ads, nothing like that. All right, let me get off my TikTok soapbox because I really want to talk about what schools can do. Because I think,
Mm.
yeah, we freaked them out, right, Lydia? We know that they're going to have not going to be the best year necessarily, maybe organically, maybe it will. Let's talk about some things they can do. We're going to try to go through this pretty quickly so that we can go back to the chat and get in with your questions. What are some old school strategies that aren't rich anymore? What do you
Yeah.
think?
Before I get into that, Jen, I do want to clarify too that we're in this weird time where I to be clear, I'm not saying, and I'm not saying this to be self-serving either. Like, I'm not saying like, oh, well, what's the point then? Just don't do any SEO. Like, that's not it. It's basically, hey, there's a more competitive dynamic here, more and a more volatile environment. And so, now more than ever, in a way, got to put your best foot forward on your website, but also to be realistic, you can't expect that that's going to just like rain organic traffic on you, high intent, leads necessarily to the same level of confidence as in years past, right? So,
Yeah.
the way I've characterized it to, our bosses, right, is that based on all these macro trends, the curve on, expected traffic that will be yielded to your site, it's on a downward slope. And I don't know what that steepness of the curve looks like. It's probably going to be different for everybody in every industry,
Mhm.
but it is downward. It is not upward. So that's kind of the main point here. But again, there are still, best practices and things that we all can do to try to squeeze more out of that ever important channel, because that is still a channel that for most schools I would bet is, resulting in more than half your enrollments, right?
Lydia, our company is also proof that like, and I say our company, not maybe not BSD specifically, but I'm talking about like the agency clients we have. You can get less traffic and more leads.
Yeah.
You and we're going to be talking about that right now, you
Yep.
guys. You
Yep.
can get less traffic and get more leads.
Yeah.
And you do that with having really great strategies to convert traffic on your page, which is something we're experts at Beauty School Directory. We have an 8-step lead form, Lydia, an 8-step lead form, and we're still getting leads. Like we
Yeah.
know how to convert traffic. We're the experts in that area. Let's chat about that.
Yeah. Totally.
One of the things I hear about all the time, old school, is blogging. Blogging is going to save the day. You want to rank high, you need more rich content on your website, you need blogs. Lydia, answer.
No. Flat out no. I mean, I'll be a little more nuanced here. I think the reason why I say no is that blogging tends to be on a website the easiest, is the path of least resistance to getting a new piece of content up, right? It's like here's the little sandbox within the larger site, and yep, let's just pop another blog post on there. The problem with the way that I'd say most beauty schools are implementing blogs is that they tend to be topics that are either irrelevant, right? So they're beauty related, but not beauty education related. So things like, I don't know, um, hair color trends for spring 2025. It's like, okay, that's very, very tangentially related to you, but is that really demonstrating, what you offer as a beauty school? Not really. And the
Right.
type of traffic that you're going to get, you're not going to get any high intent to enroll people coming through. You're going to get people who are just kind of curious about the color trends of 2025, right? Um, so it's irrelevant topics that can also, by the way, dilute what we call topical authority of your site. So kind of moving off, like, Google's always trying to figure out like what is this site about in
I'm
totality. And
gonna
the
say,
more
wouldn't that even confuse Google? Are they going to be like, oh, is this
Exactly.
so long?
Yes,
This
it
isn't
can. It
cool.
can. So
Yeah.
if you have a lot of, if like the preponderance of your traffic is coming to blog posts that are about maybe beauty topics, but not your programs, there is a risk there of essentially confusing Google or kind of moving Google off of what it thought your site was about, right? So it could be irrelevant. Potentially, it could be what we call cannibalistic of your main program topics. So, for example, I see very often it's like, why attend a cosmetology program as a blog post? And it's like, no, put that stuff on your program page, right? Think about your program pages, your location pages, and your home page. Almost always that trio that's the those are the pillars of your site. Those are what I call commercial pages. And that's where they're your moneymaker pages, right? Like on the site, focus on those, make sure that the key information that is needed is on those pages, and you're not just pumping out another blog post a month that is actually like stepping on the toes of those same pages, right? It's okay if those are, so I'm not going to say blogging is terrible. I'd say blogging in the way that a lot of schools do it uh, is not serving a business purpose and is many times creating almost this vanity metric of traffic potentially going up. But again, what is the purpose if it is really just diluting and kind of pulling the center of gravity away from those pillar pages? So that's my philosophy, is that,
So
like,
we need
I've
richer
seen.
content on some of our
Yes.
actual pages. And then
Yeah.
is that something that needs to be revisited? Is Google like, oh, they just did an update to their program page? Oh, like does that bode well for a school, or is it like get all that rich content up front and now you're cruising? Because I think that's
I would
bad blogs, by the way, because they're like, oh, new content, new content, new content.
Yeah, so there is a little bit of utility with blogs in that it does, it's potentially a forcing function for regular new updates, and Google does like that, like fresh meat for the algorithm type of thing, right?
Right.
So there's some benefit to that, but again, in the way that a lot of schools implement it, I would say that it's just kind of misguided or a misallocation of resources. You're better off scrutinizing your core, like I said, those core conversion pages to see what else you can add to it. I mean, just as an example, we did some interesting, I think I shared this with you earlier, Jen, but we did some interesting heat map user experience reviews where we essentially have software that we can install and see, hey, where are people tapping on the page? And that oftentimes can kick out some ideas for us for A/B testing for, how can this page be improved? And we saw one of our clients had a section that was about the class schedule, and the class schedule, not talking about class starts, but literally like, for a
Monday to
full-time
Friday,
program.
9 to 5. Yeah.
Exactly, right. That level of detail. And not all schools provide it, but we're like, hey, this is interesting. We're seeing a lot of taps on that. And I had this hypothesis like, well, what if we took that out? If we took that out, would people be more likely to get in touch with admissions because they don't have that information? So really fascinatingly, when we did that, lead conversion went down. like by really one of the fastest A/B tests we've ever run. It went to significance really fast.
Are y'all hearing
And
that? They took out the class schedule
correct.
off the website and they got way less leads.
Correct. Yeah. And so psychologically, I mean, like I can only surmise and hypothesize what's going on here, but I think
Yeah,
you would agree, Jen. It's like people want the answer so they can really kick the tires on it. Like, hey, is this something I can really fit into my life? And then they can start imagining themselves, oh yeah, I could do that.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'll contact admissions, right? But they're still, they want a lot of that up front. And so that would be a concrete example of something that, and we're still trying to test this more to see if we can replicate this across more sites. But that's a really interesting nugget that really I think supports the idea that you're never really done with those key program pages, and the more you can figure out how to really serve those pain points of your
Yeah.
customers, of your
And see what
prospects.
resonates. And like,
Yeah,
I have been saying this, if y'all have sat in my classes or webinars over the past 2 years, stop gatekeeping information. You come off sleazy. You come off like you're putting market price on a menu. Like, just tell me how much the lobster is. Like, I don't want to be surprised when the bill comes. And I love when schools are like, this is our schedule. Like, this is what we're
mhm,
doing. And as a user, you're like, which by the way, you think these kids think they go to school once a week? Like, they're not idiots. Like they have friends in cosmetology school. Like they know that cosmetology school is probably going to be 4 or 5 days a week. Like this isn't groundbreaking. And so like the schools that put information out, it's a win. And that's what we've been able to see. Um, Becky asked, do we have data from that, like from the research? Our data is the schools that we work with, right? That's what we've
yeah,
tested it
I don't think I can share that just because it is a specific client
proprietary
of
to that.
ours. But yeah, I'm just saying that like directionally, that was shocking and really interesting to me. And we are trying to do a form of that A/B test across some of our other client sites as well. But like take that as you will. And all schools I believe should be really interrogating their program pages and
But
location
also
pages.
test things, right, Lydia? Like test and let's kind of let's sort of like speed
Mhm.
up this last part.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We need to be testing photos. Like, well, we all know that stock photos do not convert as well as actual photos from your school. Like, we need to be testing the color of the button. We need to be testing
Yes.
what that does it say get more info now or does it say request info? Like, we need to be testing these things regularly on the website to see what hits. We need to be testing schedules. Ooh, here's a fun
Yes.
one. Let me just ruffle some. We need to be testing tuition. What if we
That
put
we have some, we may or may not have some A/B tests like that running right now, Jen,
I am
for
like, that's the
similar
one I'm most curious about.
category of information, yeah, to this class
Yeah.
schedule stuff.
Yeah. And for me, a lot of it is like, go see what your competitors are doing. Like, what are they telling the public? Because it's funny, even the tuition one. I know a school in a very competitive market that always they have their tuition on the page. And the other schools in that market feel like, no, we're going to gatekeep it. Well, because their biggest competitor has it, it almost forced them to do it because they're like, well, they're getting answers from this school, so I
Yeah.
better get them. And their
Yep.
conversions went up. And so they got more people filling out forms because they were like, they were serving up on a silver platter, like, if our competitor is going to do it, we're going to do it.
Yeah.
So that's what you should be checking out. Like, so I am curious on those tests. Okay, what about, let me get to some of these other questions. Other SEO checklist items. Can you just give us like a top, like other things to do other than just
Yeah. So, I'm a little bit restricted here in the sense that like I don't want to give a checklist that is hard to action from the standpoint of a non-SEO savvy person, right? That requires lots of tools. And I mean, like there's a whole boatload of stuff that I would do or an SEO professional would do, but I don't think that's very helpful. So I would say that if you are an interested stakeholder and layperson here, dead simple, but just literally pull up your website on your phone and try to find key information or to try to fill out your own form. If that's like, the user experience aspect of it. Again, dead simple, but I think a lot of us, skip that step because it's like, oh, I know it's on the website or I'm used to seeing it, but if is it on your desktop? And
yeah,
that's
our
again,
thing. Or we look on our laptops or work
yeah,
computers. We almost
exactly,
never bring up our phone when we're like 90
exactly.
or
Yeah,
leisure.
Right. So try to do those key tasks of finding information or, finding a contact or whatever that your prospects are trying. Other things that take a little bit more digging behind the scenes, right? Are there super old pages, like again, maybe blog pages from 10 years ago that are not serving the site anymore? Especially if you understand enough to get into Google Analytics and try to see what the traffic is, and even beyond traffic, I would say look at the key events. That's essentially conversion events on the page. If that's basically at zero, and you're kind of like, you know what, no one's really going to find value in this. It's like, something from again 10 years ago. Consider just getting rid of it. And again, like don't worry about like traffic can be in many cases kind of a vanity metric. What matters is high intent leads and enrolls from your
Yeah,
site, right? So again, I'm not saying that blogging doesn't have its time and place. It certainly does, especially if it's more about showcasing the authenticity of the school.
right.
It's in that vein of what you said about TikTok. Like I do believe that more and more schools should be showcasing that kind of, culture and uniqueness and the quirkiness and the real people wherever possible on the site. And the blog is actually a good place for that. So, just
How
give a
you
critical eye to what pages are on your site. And
Well, what
then,
about and I want to make sure we leave time for this. There's so many
yeah,
questions to answer.
totally. Yeah.
Responding to reviews, because we talked about that at the very
Oh,
beginning.
yeah, yeah,
Map ranking. Can you give us an answer on that?
So responding to reviews technically is not part of the local SEO algorithm, which is again that kind of subset of SEO. Is really around that map pack or local pack. Um, Reason why local SEO is critically important is that that tends to come up for like brand searches and people who are already inclined to be really high propensity to enroll. We see oftentimes multiple times the web conversion rate on folks who are basically coming through your Google business profile. So that it does matter. That's a lever for sure. And I would say if you're not set up, and optimized on your Google business profile, you absolutely should be spending time on that. Review replies, again, technically not a ranking factor, but it is important, I think, to showcase because a lot of your prospects are looking at your reviews,
Yeah,
especially on Google. And I like to say you're never actually responding to the person who wrote the review. You're writing for everybody else who's reading that review and wanting to see, oh, well, what kind of business is this? How are they responding? Right. So hopefully most of them are easy peasy, like, oh, thank you so much for your 5-star glowing review. Glad you had a great experience, right? The other, the once in a blue moon, the 1 stars, I think it's critically important to respond to them so that you come across as accessible and responsive, right? It's just kind of common sense here. And so, again, it doesn't directly affect your prominence in the local SEO listings, but I do think that is something that every school should be looking at and doing.
I agree. I agree. And people do. Like it's almost like on TikTok how you go straight to the comments. On Google, you go straight to the reviews. Like that's
Yeah.
what I do when I'm looking at, I mean, any new nail salon or just whatever. All right, we're gonna jump over to the chat here, but my last personal question for you, Lydia, is schools that need SEO. Can this be done in-house or should it be outsourced?
Of course, anything can be done in-house, right? I think the reason why a lot of schools who can afford it outsource it is because, you don't have the core competency of like managing a whole person or whatever. It's like a way to access fractional SEO services, and I totally get that. Um, but arguably, the best SEO, like the best social, will be done in-house. So if you actually had some bandwidth internally or someone who, just kind of a smart person, I do believe that a lot of it can be done in-house. And the reason is very, again, similar to TikTok and social. It's like, yeah, what the algorithm now is seeking and what users are seeking is that authenticity. And that's actually more readily done internally than by an external agency. So what I mean by that, I mentioned before, like featuring your culture as an example. Like, yeah, you do some blog posts or do little snippets that maybe land on your program pages about, like alumni testimonials, or do a Q&A with an instructor, or FAQ with the financial aid director. These are things that are going to generate content that is both helpful and useful to your prospects, and also good for SEO, because it's like, yeah, great. Finally, someone's answering these questions for me, right? If I were a prospect. So, and in a way, one of the big challenges we have as an agency working with our partners is getting that pipeline of information, of just like collateral, like photos, videos, like, oh, you had a guest artist come by. That's awesome. I wish I were able to be there on the ground, because then it would be, yeah, let's get a little snippet of video. Let's get a couple of photos. Let's hear a couple quotes from students who were there. Like, oh, it was so awesome to hear so-and-so. I learned these things. I mean, like, that would make a banger of a blog post. And does that necessarily itself drive a lot of leads? Not necessarily, but in the aggregate, if you kept doing that kind of thing, that
Yeah,
wasn't just this like, why should you attend cosmetology school? 5
right.
reasons. Like, no one wants to read that. They want to know, what is that student experience going to be like? And that is very, very powerful to be driven internally. So, I would say if schools have the bandwidth to do that kind of thing here and there, I know that's a challenge, of course, right? But you're best positioned internally in-house to do that kind of thing for sure. And I do believe that that is that kind of thing that will break through the noise, and also allow Google to say, like, oh yeah, okay, I get it. It's a real business. It's not some AI generated site. And
I
so
love that you
in
answered
the
it that
long
way
run,
too, because, I mean, there's going to be agencies out there, regardless, agencies want your money at the end of the day. And so, like, the schools will be like, yeah, let's outsource our social media. And I'm over here like, oh my God, like, guys, even our agency clients, we won't even do it. Like, there's not even a line item where we're like, yep, we will do your social media for you. We won't even do it because we know it's not successful. Like,
yeah,
organic social media
we don't
needs
want
to.
to check the box. Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
exactly. And I think there's too many companies out there that literally have their hand out, that are taking advantage of schools, that are like, oh yeah, we'll do everything SEO wise. So that's why they're writing these blog posts that mean nothing, because they're not in your schools every day. That's why they're doing that. And that's why they're doing little Canva quotes all over your social media, because you're outsourcing them. But that is not authentic, and that is not interesting. That's not what people are looking for. I want to get into the
Correct.
questions. This was
Yeah,
such a great conversation. We might go a couple minutes over, but
fine with
let's
me.
get into the questions. So I'm scrolling back up where Bart had a really good comment about, like, have we considered that beauty school students maybe don't find schools just with search, is more sort of like that organic stuff coming back. And I will say a couple things with this. Last year, and we did a webinar on getting back into high schools. I think grassroots, like getting back to those basics, is so important, because so many Gen Zers are not being forced to go to a 4-year school by their parents anymore. Because, spoiler alert, their parents are still in debt from going to a school themselves 20 years
Right.
ago.
Yeah, they're on student loan.
So they're like, oh, cool. You want to go to a vocational school? I'm here for that. A lot of Gen Z is choosing vocational school. So I think you need a really strong high school strategy. But I will say this, even if they know the school they want to go to, Gen Z wants to have everything up front. They're still going to go to your website. So even if I know I'm going to go to ABC Beauty School, I'm still going to their website, because that's where I'm going to submit my form. And then that's where I'm going to get answers to my questions and really see if this is the school for me. So maybe they, again, kind of know like the brand. I know I want to go to that school because I pass it every single day. But that's why it's so important to have your social
Yes. Yeah,
website.
I would say the website now, I mean, like, even as I'm talking about the erosion of the, Google fire hose as a source of leads, right? I would say the flip side of the coin is the website is still your digital storefront. It matters hugely. And we're talking about a less linear path for people to get to you. And they might come through other gatekeepers other than Google now. But you still need a really strong website that showcases your student experience and your service and products really, in order to, it's just table stakes now. I mean, like you've got to have it for a brand. Mhm.
Yep. Love it. Love it. Um, you guys will get a recording to this tomorrow, first thing in the morning in your inbox. So if you have to jump, I get it, but we're going to answer a couple more questions.
Yeah, sure.
Someone is asking, I keep seeing the term GEO, generative engine optimization everywhere. Is this becoming the new SEO?
So you're going to hear different answers depending on who you talk to. I will say that when I'm on LinkedIn, I see this a lot from SEOs, even leading SEOs who are like, I'm so excited. This is the new frontier of SEO, is like figuring out how to show up in ChatGPT or Perplexity or wherever,
Someone
right?
actually just asked
Um,
about that also. How do you show up in ChatGPT? That's funny you say.
so, okay. So that is one side of it. And like to some extent, I agree. And by the way, there seems to be a lot of general correlation between, like showing up in search results traditionally and showing up in the generative AI engines. So I don't think it's like this wildly different set of things that you need to be doing to, again, in this like black box way, flip the right switches and I'll show up in ChatGPT. That's not it. It's more like fundamentals, people, right? Answer the questions, be good to users. Goodness will hopefully come from that, right? But I will say I'm definitely of the more, I guess, cynical, pessimistic side of things, which is that AI engines, they don't care. They don't care about sending clicks to you. Like I said, I think it's more of a fig leaf of like, here, look, we're not making this up completely. Like, here's some sources, right? But let's be real, no one's clicking on those. And they don't have the incentive for people to click through them. They want to just keep you in this sort of hermetically sealed, like, yep, ask your next question to the chatbot, right? And so I think it's sort of a losing game before we even enter it. I mean, not that like we shouldn't try to, as a discipline, understand better how to show up better in the AI engines, but I don't think that we ought to be investing a lot of time and energy to reverse engineer that or chase that game, just because the setup of it again I don't think is amenable to the clicks, right? So is it good for brand, to have your beauty school mentioned on top of others? Sure. But I think like of all the things that beauty schools could be doing in the realm of marketing, chasing this like, can I show up better on ChatGPT? That ain't it. Like
Yeah, I
it's
agree.
not, and it's not even like a huge chunk of the traffic. I mean, again, it's like eroding and nibbling away from Google, but it's not like there's
Yeah.
any overwhelming traffic that's coming from that.
Yeah. So I mean, we as a company still say that schools should be spending their money on Google paid AdWords. And then of course, a little bit of social. You should absolutely be using Beauty Schools Directory. If you're not, that's
There are
something I
just more
want.
efficient ways to spend your money. Yeah, honestly.
Correct, correct. And I mean, it is something I want to mention. If your organic leads are going down, Beauty Schools Directory really is a good supplement for that. And 90% of our leads don't go to school websites. They come to a search website to see directory website to see what's out there. So if you're not a BSD member, I'd love to chat with you. We don't have long-term contracts. Okay, so are FAQ pages on websites valuable for SEO?
It's not a straight yes or no. I mean, essentially, if the FAQ, I wouldn't say that the existence of an FAQ page per se is critical, right? That's way too stark a statement. What I believe is important is to, if you really do have frequently asked questions, those are pain points of your customers again, right? So if your prospects are wanting to know certain things, especially if they might be kicking those tires before they even talk to admissions, answer them. Answer
Yeah,
them in a place that's prominent before they get to you. And again, per that class schedules example we talked about, that may even improve your conversion, right? You got to play around with that. So there's no magic in this like FAQ page format or that being a separate page. I mean, oftentimes FAQs could be embedded as part of a program page. So there are ways to, now I'm getting into more technical SEO stuff, but yeah, there's like schema markup in the background that you can add. It's essentially code that says like, hey, Google, blinking neon lights, this is an FAQ, that on the margin can kind of help boost that. But at the end of the day, again, fundamentals, it's like if you've got frequently asked questions that you really believe are frequently asked questions from your prospects, yes, answering them prominently on your pages will help with SEO on
Yeah.
balance.
And then Brenda asked about valuable pages. Of course, we talked about program page and homepage.
Yeah.
So from what I'm hearing, she asked if there's any other pages. I mean, I'm hearing from you, like, it really depends what your consumer is looking for from you and making sure all those pages are rich. But do you see any other, actually, she even brings up specifically like the client spa page. We know that like sometimes half the traffic goes to that. Like, so what is your answer to that?
Um, that is still important, I think, to again serve all your users in the sense
Yeah.
that, like, yeah, you don't want your salon or spa customers or clients to be frustrated and trying to book something,
Mhm.
and also be pretty clear what is a school funnel path versus a salon inquiry
Yeah, you
path,
don't want to
right?
bury that. You want to have a really
Yeah,
clear thing
yeah.
at the top, salon spa. Like,
To sort of like triage away, or else, I mean, I assume you would have solved that already because admissions would be like, what the heck? I'm getting all these salon inquiries and
sure.
that's annoying, right? Um, So, I mean, I would say that yes, it's important, but it's not like the salon page. I mean, it's almost like an independently grafted on page in the sense of it doesn't affect your SEO for your school side, right? Um, First of all, don't worry. I mean, it's like small enough of a presence where I don't think it'll like pull away the topical authority of the site. Like I wouldn't worry to that extent if that's
Yeah.
what she was asking. But the the main thing really is for the school admission side. It is the homepage oftentimes. It is the individual program pages and it's the location pages. And then I'd say secondarily, sometimes if you had like a really particularly strong financial aid page or something like that, that can help too. But really the vast majority of the leads are going to come from, I would almost put money on it every time, like that trio of pages.
Love it. Okay, we are almost getting to the end of questions. What about adding videos or infographics to pillar pages? Will that help you with SEO?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, videos, as users' behavior has evolved, right? Video being one of the ways in which people, especially potentially younger consumers, want to consume information. That is important. I mean, I do think that if you have the wherewithal to have good video, then place that prominently on certain pages, and you might have to kind of do some testing to see like, hey, is this being viewed, and also is this helping or hurting conversion? I mean, I think I'd want to be caveat it to say, like, obviously, like every page layout is a little different and it's hard to know what's going to be distracting versus helpful.
Yeah.
But I think especially if you have a video that's current, that showcases your business in the school, and really, gives that taste of the student experience, almost like, oh, okay, well, I can see myself there type of video versus something that is maybe outdated or a little bit too B-roll-y and too polished. I think if you had a good video, then yeah, that can absolutely be helpful.
Yeah, and I love the idea of even having like social content type of video on your website, meaning when I was giving those TikTok ideas, like these are the
Mhm.
3 ways to enroll in our school,
Yeah.
making something short, making something sweet. Patrick absolutely wrote in our comments, like as long as it doesn't kill your site speed, you don't want everything not to be
Yes.
able to load well on the phone because you have like this heavily embedded video.
Yep.
Um,
Agreed. Or
but
lazy load it. Yeah. Mhm.
Yes, exactly. So, I love the idea of like on the financial aid page, hey, I know you have questions about financial aid. Let me go over the top 5 ways that our students pay for school. Boom, 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 boom.
Mhm.
Good news is we have a financial aid director that's going to sit down and speak with you before that. We just want to make
Yeah.
sure we're a good fit for you. Go ahead and schedule a tour. Come in here and see the school. Like something super short and sweet. Okay, last question. And we did kind of talk about this, but someone asked it, so I want to go over this again. Lead form optimization and sort of like best
Yes.
practices with that. Because, Lydia, we have an 8-step lead form on BSD. Schools absolutely should not. We only do that because we're trying to weed out the crap for you. We want higher intent people. Could we say, give us your name and phone number and call it a day? Sure. But then like the quality of our leads would tank because we're like a third party site. And so school websites should not have these super long forms. Not a fan of it. Let's
Yeah.
talk about lead form optimization,
Yeah,
Lydia.
absolutely. So, the big caveat is that it's hard to say best practices across the board because we have seen through testing that a lot of things that work on one beauty school site don't actually work on another beauty school site. So I would say things that tend to stick as best practices would be shorter forms. So if you have a lot of extraneous questions that frankly your admissions isn't even using to work the leads, then why ask them, right? So that's pretty self-explanatory, but short is good. If you've got those optional questions, consider dropping them. Um, but anything is fair game, honestly, on the form, right? The headline, the colors, the button color in contrast to the form background color, and what the call to action is on the button. And we have found that that is because that's where the action is. That can actually even changing the button text can result in a, plus or minus 20% swing. I mean, like it can be significant even for such a simple change. Again, I'm not able to offer these like sacrosanct rules of like always use get more info instead of let's go or whatever, right? Because again,
Right.
like this does
It
change.
does, it does vary, I think,
Yeah,
depending on the market and sometimes like
the
Cosmo versus like a massage.
brand. Yeah,
Yeah.
lots of different things. But, we found, for example, that, like, for example, Aveda branded schools, just as an example, that those audiences tend to respond better to the idea of like a journey, like, find your path in this journey versus, and then some other schools, maybe the students are a little bit more like, nope. It's not a journey, it's just training. Come on, like maybe they're a little more practical about it. So I don't know, I'm just surmising what's
Yeah.
behind it, but it what resonates with your different audiences will change. But I encourage everyone to absolutely test these different things because there's an optimum type of form setup per school. You just have to kind of get there iteratively through these changes.
Yeah. And then, I had a client reach out that wanted to add, a couple things to their form. Basically, it was pre-qualifying them. And I'm very anti that. It is up to your admissions team to pre-qual. So if you're asking, like, do you have transportation? Do you have, a high school
Oh
diploma?
yeah.
Yeah. Do you have child? Like,
Heck
if
no.
you're asking all
Yeah.
these sort of like pre-qualifications, I think you should not be doing that on a lead form. It
You
will
can
hurt.
do it after the lead is submitted on
Yeah,
the
that's a good
so-called
idea.
thank you page. That would be a good place to put it if you're like, hey, I actually do really want to know these things. Well, okay, you can roll the dice on whether they answer them after they hit the all important submit button.
Yeah, that's a great point. And then someone asked about, so like if we're looking at homepage and usually there's like a hero image with a lead form next to it. Do you have any thoughts on instead of the hero image, that being like a video versus image?
So yeah, I think more testing is needed to understand whether that would be helpful or hurtful for conversion. I would say that I could see it cutting both ways, right? Like obviously, if it's a really well produced video and you're proud of it, that and a lot of people do like video, right? That speaks to okay, well maybe it'll even bring in more traffic, not just like once they land on the page they're going to interact with it, but potentially even more traffic, or especially if it's like a YouTube embed and maybe they're finding you through YouTube as another gateway. But the caveats there would be absolutely, I would watch out for site speed, which when one of our guests mentioned before, I absolutely co-sign that worry is like make sure it's implemented technically in a way that is going to be not damaging to site speed. Secondly, is it is possible that that becomes so distracting that people are like, oh, I don't even see the lead form, essentially, right? And just kind of gloss over that. And so, whether they end up filling the lead form after they watch it or not. I mean, that can be teased out through an A/B test, but I can't categorically say whether that's we personally haven't done enough testing on that for me to say like, yep, that's a finding.
Yeah, that's fair. But I do like student interaction type of photos, I will say,
Mhm.
as opposed to just like a lot of beauty schools have like a model. It's just like that, that's the image.
Yes. Or like here's a picture of our beautiful salon with the stations and it's empty. Like I see
Yeah.
that a lot too. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that just looks kind of dead. Like don't do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, like you're a school. Like have them working on a doll head, a mannequin, like have a picture of
Mhm.
that, or have them working on a real person and a
Yeah,
teacher sitting behind them. Like
totally.
any sort of like inaction
Yes.
is the way to go.
Yeah. Yep.
And
Especially the kind of close cropped stuff too. Not
yes,
like there's
super wide
more things
shot,
happening in the
10
background.
students and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, agreed. Yeah, that closer. Lydia, thanks for your time. Sorry we went over, but
Not at all.
I would say the
Yeah.
majority of people stayed on with us. So thank you all
Okay.
for going
All
over.
right. I hope
Um,
it was helpful for everybody
and
in
we
these
do
grim
have
times at SEO.
I'm going to go ahead and put this in the chat right now. Our next webinar, y'all, it's going to be in February. It's going to be so good. It's going to be February 27th, and it's called You Can't Say That When Marketing Meets Compliance. I specifically want to know, what can we say about how much we make? Like, what are the things we're not allowed to say? What are we allowed to say? I think it's going to be a really, really good one. So it's going to be a compliance-driven one, meets marketing. Please join us next month. Y'all, thank you. Thanks for all the kind
Thank
comments.
you,
We'll see you guys
Jen.
next month.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank you everyone
Leah.
for joining.
We
Have a
appreciate
good
it.
one. Bye bye.